Okay, so welcome to Q4, week 1. So this week is a little different from the others because instead of doing math rules, we're going to focus on all vocabulary and naming of terms. So you can always open and write down any of these terms and pictures, but you'll just be able to, out of a picture, identify what term is being featured or how to name it, all right? So it is a lot of information this week. Okay, so at the top, I kind of have a lot of the terms all on one circle so you can see the relationship with each other. But these are the words that you're going to have to be able to identify from a picture, and only one will be on a picture at a time. So let's go ahead and go through them. You can take notes. It is a lot of information. And I start from the very basics. So some of the terms you have heard of before and some might be brand new. So to start off with, we're talking about circles. So by definition, you won't have to write out the definitions, just so you know. But it is the set of all points in a plane from a given distance from a point. So if we have point P, and I drew all of the points that were, let's say, 5 centimeters away, okay? And we would have infinitely many of these. Well, as we go all around the point P, we would come up with this outer circle, okay? And so that's why it's called a circle. There we go. Erase that. Now, we're also going to focus on naming the items. So I have a picture example, and then we also talk about how to name them. So when you name a circle, you just use the circle symbol, which looks like a circle, and then it's the point that's in the middle. So this would be circle P if I wanted to name it, okay? All right, next, we're going to talk about the center. So the center is the point that is in the middle of the circle. So on this picture, we've got O in the middle, and we only use one letter. So since it's a point, we draw a dot, and then we use the letter. So this would be point O if I was naming the center. All right? Okay. The next term is called radius. If we have more than one radius, it is plural, which is radii. But a radius goes from the center of a circle to a point that's on the edge of the circle. It is a segment, so it starts and stops, and we use the little segment symbol above the two letters, okay? So on this circle, we would have radius PB. Now, I could also say radius BP. They're the same. So sometimes we say alphabetical, sometimes the order can be reversed. These are both the same segment. It's not that one is better than the other. So on a quiz, I would only have one of these options, okay? Or if you had to name it, I would accept both options. On the quiz, I won't always have the symbol above the letters. So if that's the case, don't worry about it, and you would just type in the letters, okay? If we drew another radius, I could have point D, and so I could call this radius PD, okay? So we still use two letters, the center and the point that's on the circle. The next term is called diameter. So a diameter, it goes from one point on the circle to another point on the circle, and it has to pass through the center, okay? Now, when we name a diameter, though, we only use two letters, the starting and the stopping point. So one way to name this is segment AB. I could also say segment BA. But notice, even though I go through point P, that is not part of the name. It's only the start and stop point. So you want to know how many letters to use and which letters, okay? The next term, this might be new. You could have heard of it, but it doesn't get used very much before. It's chord. So a chord is a segment, which means it has a start and stop point, and the endpoints have to be on the circle. So on my example, I have segment AB. That's a chord. If we look at the original picture, we have a chord up here. Okay? Now, I can also draw a chord. If I call this C and D, I can draw a chord that goes through the center. which is a diameter. So that's why a diameter says it is a chord. So a diameter is a special chord. Diameters are chords, but not all chords are diameters because they don't all go through the center. So I had chord AB and I can have chord CD. So I do want you to know that if it goes through the center, it's also a chord, but it's a diameter, which is the better name. Like saying, I'm a girl, but Mrs. Eden, that's my more specific name, which is better because it's more specific to me. A secant. I think this is going to be new. So a secant, if I would cut off these two arrows at the end, it would be a chord. A secant is a line, so it takes that chord and it keeps extending them in both directions. All right. And so because it's a line, we use that line symbol above the two letters that are on the circle. So I could draw this one. Okay. And so I could call that line AC. Once again, I could say CA. We can reverse them. That's fine. Still the same answer. Still the same secant. Up here, we have a secant. Now, the arrows aren't drawn, but if it's outside the circle, it doesn't just stop. So you want to just act like there are arrows at the end. Okay? All right, after secant, we have tangent. So tangent for me, I always remembered it. It's not the same tangent we did with trig last quarter. It's a new tangent word. So tangent means to touch the circle. The tangent line actually touches the circle in exactly 1 point. Sometimes it's hard to draw that, so it looks like it touches in more than 1 point, but it doesn't. So this would be tangent AB, and it's a line, so we use that. I could draw one up here. And so we could call this, sometimes if I just have the 1 point, let's call it D, then we would call that line D. So I say 2 letters, but sometimes they do only give you 1, and so you can only use 1. All right. Circumference. Now we're not going to name circumference and we're not going to find circumference. That's going to be in future weeks. So right now I just want you to know what it is. So circumference is the distance around a circle. It's also called the perimeter of a circle. So eventually we'll find how much that is. But for this week, I just want you to identify that that's what it is. Likewise with area. We won't be finding the area, so no formulas this week. But area is how much the circle holds. It's the region that's covered or enclosed by the boundary of the circle. Okay, and so it'll be shaded. All right, similar sector. So sector might be new as well. So typically when I see a sector, it's just going to be one part and this will be shaded in. So I call it like a pie slice. That's what this sector is. We will also be finding the area of a sector. It defines it as the fraction of the area because it is just that piece of pie. Okay, so it's a piece of the area. That's a sector. Now, there are 2 specific types of sector that I'd like you to know. A minor sector, which is this dark pink part, it means that it's less than half a circle. A major sector means that it's more than half a circle. So those are more specific types of sector, but sector in general just means part of the area of a circle. No naming and no finding it yet. That's coming. All right, now the last 4 terms are all kind of related. So in general, we're going to talk about arc. So an arc kind of sounds like an arch, or it's the curved part of the circle. So it's actually on the circle. It's not inside. 2 points on a circle and the continuous part of the circle between the points. So we made this dark. So we're going to use 2 letters and the symbol is like that curved arc. You want the starting and stopping point of the arc. Okay? Now, there are 3 specific types of arcs, kind of like with the area of the sector part. So a minor arc. A minor arc means that it's less than half a circle. So right here, I've got AC, It's less than half a circle, and we want to use 2 letters. I could also do arc BC. Okay? So those are both minor because they're less than half a circle. A semicircle is exactly half a circle, so it's always going to equal 180. Now, when we go to name it, I say try to use 2 or 3 letters. It depends on what picture you're given. So I know I have to go through the center. And so if I said ACB, so I start at A, I go to C, and then I stop at B. That's how we want to name our semicircles. If we have 3 letters, that's better because I know that means like the top half of the circle. I could also say AB. Now, if I only use 2 letters, it's still okay, but I don't know if I'm referring to this AB side or this AB side. So that's why if you have a third dot in the middle, that's better. Now, let's head a point D here. We don't use 4. So if there's 2 points in the middle, you want to pick one. So I could also say arc A, D, and I still have to stop at B though. So these are both the same arc, but they have different names. Okay, so only use 3. And then last we've got major arc. So a major arc means that we're more than half a circle. So I said it's between 181, technically 180.1, up to 360. So the order is going to be very important. So if we look at BAC, I start at B, I have to go to A, and I chose this direction because I know I'm going to C, and we can't go back on itself. So that's how I knew I had to go to the left and not go to the right. So BA to C. Notice that's almost a full circle, but it's definitely more than half. And for major arcs, we always use 3 letters because we want to know which direction it's going. Okay? All right, so on your practices, you'll either identify the shape or you will name the object with the letters. Remember, every time I say name, it's like your name and you use letters. Okay, so give those a try.